House Republicans are drafting a repeal plan for Obamacare, but they're keeping it top secret. So much so, lawmakers went for a hunt on the Hill Thursday, trying to track it down. Democratic Whip Steny Hoyer ran around the Capitol looking for a copy of the bill, but didn't have much luck. So he turned to a figurehead in the Republican Party for help.
Mr. Lincoln, I can't find the bill. I know, Mr. Lincoln, you are as upset with your party as I am today.
Republican Senator Rand Paul was reportedly locked out of a meeting about the bill, so House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi tweeted some words of support. She posted this photo Thursday with a caption, "Just helping out Rand Paul, #releasethehounds." The Republican leadership overseeing that replacement bill is facing new resistance from the party's far-right wing, where lawmakers say anything short of a full repeal is not enough. And key conservative organizations are chiming in, pressuring lawmakers to support more aggressive action against the Affordable Care Act. One of those groups is Americans for Prosperity, a group backed by the Republican mega-donors Charles and David Koch. I sat down Thursday with the group's president, Tim Phillips.
Let's talk about Obamacare. You want a complete repeal of the law, but the White House and many Republicans want to leave certain parts of it in place. Is this something that your group is prepared to stand wholly against if the White House and Republicans in Congress decide we're going to try and preserve a few of those elements of Obamacare?
We think that you can preserve some of the things that are important. Pre-existing conditions, that's an issue. A lot of Americans, it's important to them. They've got medical conditions that carry over from years or maybe even decades. And so we think there are reforms you can undertake to fix that. Risk pooling is one way to do it, where you take you allow folks to pool together when they have pre-existing conditions. It lowers the insurance costs for them, even if they have some pretty tough ailments they're battling. So we don't have any issue at all with trying to make some of the good parts of the law, and there's only a couple. One of them is the pre-existing condition. We want to make sure those are still taken care of. Our goal in repealing Obamacare isn't just to go back and tear out a law that the president passed that we don't like. We want to actually improve health care for every American.
As this process moves forward, some Republicans have expressed concern about the time it might take between a repeal and a replacement. Is there any kind of political cover that you can give to those Republicans who are hearing from constituents that, in fact, they are worried about that?
We know that there are raucous town hall meetings around the country right now, and they're getting a lot of phone calls from folks on the other side saying don't repeal Obamacare. It's important for Republicans to remember that they've won 4 consecutive elections, 2010, 12, 14, and 16, in Congress. They have some of the largest majorities since the 1920s, in large part because they ran on repealing Obamacare. And they need to keep their promises they've made in election after election to the American people, regardless of whether they're having a few uncomfortable town hall meetings. The folks on the left, they have every right to go out and protest, not violently, but to protest and to challenge. Absolutely, that's the American way. And in 2009, we did the same thing. Remember, you were probably covering some of those events. Yeah. You bet. And so it's open and fair game. I think that's American representative democracy. And so we're not decrying those town halls at all. Again, let's not go violent, but for the most part, they haven't been violent. So that's healthy. Republicans just have to remember that in 4 consecutive elections, they promised to repeal Obamacare, and they were rewarded with some of the largest congressional majorities in American history for the Republican Party. They need to keep their word. They need to keep their promises to the American people.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions has recused himself from any investigation into Russia. What's your reaction to that?
You hope it's not a distraction from the very important issues that are on the table. Tax reform is so important to this country. Repealing Obamacare and figuring out what the best way to move forward for folks on that front. Hopefully getting this economy moving again. So from our standpoint, we do economic and issues like that. We hope it's not a distraction away from the very important work that lies ahead.
Your group, Americans for Prosperity, has a roadmap essentially for what it would like to see Congress accomplish. And I wonder if you think that Congress at this time should be dedicating any time at all to investigating Russia. Do you think that's something that is potentially harmful for the goals that you have set out?
Well, we want to make sure that this economy gets moving again. Most Americans, when they looked at this election last year, that's what they're focused on and want to see out of Washington right now.
Let's talk about.
By the way, I'm not saying the other one's not an important issue, the Russia thing. I'm just saying the priority for most Americans is let's get this economy moving again.
Yeah. Speaking of issues, the Koch brothers were openly critical of President Trump's ban on travel from 7 Muslim-majority countries. And I'm curious what venues your group has to sort of push back on issues like that. I mean, if something is done through executive action, realistically, what is it that you have at your disposal to be able to try and oppose that?
We found out during the Obama years, it is difficult to impact these executive orders because all you can, or not all, most of what you can do is raise public awareness of it. And so that's what we did during the Obama years with some of these executive orders that we opposed. But it is important to make sure that as much as possible it goes through the legislative process, because that's how the founding fathers designed our system of government. They wanted things to be a little difficult. They thought it was an important check on government becoming too big. And so we do think it's important to have a limited, an executive that is limited and that does have to seek out support from the legislative side. We do think that's important. It's better. It's a better way to approach things in general. Absolutely.
So what do you think about the number of executive orders we've seen from this White House so far?
We like some of them. I mean, because a lot of them have been rolling back Obama-era executive orders, and that's an important difference. And so a lot of the executive orders, it is important to note on the environmental front that Trump is doing, are actually rolling back executive orders that Obama did. So he's trying to put things back to where they were.
Tim and I also discussed the biggest gaps he sees between his group and the Trump White House and the next fights he's gearing up for. You can see more of our interview next week right here on Red and Blue.